Continuing the jazz theme from last night's Music Night here on BBC 4 First this evening, we hear from some incredible jazz legends in their own words.
Jazz has been hailed as one of the most significant musical forms of the 20th century, America's gift to the world. And the BBC archives contain hundreds of hours of performance and interviews with some of the greatest names in American jazz.
Well, here we are again.
But it could so easily have been otherwise. Towards the end of the 1930s, as Hitler's Nazi Party tightened its grip on German society, the Director General of the BBC, Lord Reith, expressed some sympathy with the regime in one specific matter: the music of the moment, known as hot jazz. In a memo, he described its influence as degrading. Germany has banned hot jazz, and I'm sorry that we should be behind in dealing with this filthy product of modernity. The very word jazz was said to be derived from a slang name for sex, and it became a label to an age of excess. Luckily for us, Lord Reith didn't have the last word on the subject. The BBC, in fact, led the way with coverage of jazz on television. From the late 50s to the late 70s, one legend after another from the golden age of jazz was captured, playing and talking about some of the century's greatest music.
It's not the length, and it ain't what you do, it's how you do it.
Yes. That's nice.
Have fun. My thing is having fun.
From the ever suave Duke Ellington to the irrepressible Louis Armstrong, to that master of swing, Count Basie, to the man who blew in the dazzling new style known as bebop, Dizzy Gillespie, and the incomparable Ella Fitzgerald. Together, they created a musical revolution. This is how they did it, in their own words. There was no more celebrated jazz survivor and no greater entertainer than the man they called Pops, Louis Armstrong.
For me, the most incredible thing about Louis Armstrong is I listen to lots of his records, and when I hear him sing a song, I suddenly go, that's a fantastic song. And I'd heard the song before, or I might have heard it might have sort of been in my consciousness but never noticed it. But when he does it, I go, that's a great song, I want to play this song now. And that is what a great artist is, an artist who basically makes you notice something that you hadn't noticed before and brings it to life.
Now the pale shining on the fields below, the folks are crooning soft and low.
No one had a better pedigree. his lip scarred from a lifetime's blowing. He's singing about a deep south that only ever existed in song.
When it's sleepy time down south.
But he knew the reality. After all, he came from where the music came from, New Orleans. It was here that the great gumbo mix of African rhythms, ragtime, gospel, blues, and marching bands all came together. He'd had a brutally hard start in life. His mother worked as a prostitute, and as a boy, Louis had a job delivering coal to the brothels or sporting houses of the city's notorious Storyville district. As he told the BBC in 1970, he kept his eyes and ears open.
Well, quite naturally, they're standing there with nothing on but a shimmies, and we'd call them teddies at the time, you know. So they have me, a little boy, and you know, put some coal on the grate, you know. Quite naturally, got to take a mug there right quick. If they'd see me, they'd slap me down. Yeah, I used to know that. But I used to hear all that good music, too. I could hear the best music there was down there. All your best musicians.
Music came to his rescue. The young Louis was sent to the local waifs' home for discharging a firearm in the street. He was given a bugle to learn, joined the band, and soon got noticed.
I was pretty fast on the horn. He used to call me Little Louis, you know. And I went up real fast from that. That's where I commenced to get known among all the sporting people. The women used to come in and big stockings full of money and make me have a bottle of beer with them and could blow them blues, you know, they like to blow them blues. And then King Oliver thought so much of my blowing, so he'd come down when he get off and sit up on the bandstand and listen to me play. He used to tell me all the time, play more lead on that horn. I was just like a clarinet, like the guys run up and down the horn nowadays, the Bachman and things. I was doing all that, fast fingers and everything. So he used to tell me, play some lead on that horn, boy, you know.
Louis played the riverboats, but when his hero and father figure, Joe King Oliver, took his band to Chicago, he soon called for his protege to join him. He was following the course of the Great Migration undertaken by thousands of black Americans from the segregated South. Only in this case, it was the start of one of the most fabulous careers in American music. In Joe Oliver's band was Lil Hardin, a classically trained piano player. She would become the second Mrs. Armstrong and gave Louis the push he needed.
I told him, I said, now, I don't want to be married to a second trumpet player. He says, what are you talking about? I said, well, I don't want to be married to a second trumpet player. I want you to play first. He said, well, I can't play first. Joe's playing first. I said, well, that's why you got to quit. He said, I can't quit Mr. Joe. Mr. Joe sent for me, and I can't quit him. I said, well, it's Mr. Joe or me.
No contest. Armstrong left and joined the New York band of Fletcher Henderson, and jazz would never be the same again.
His sense of melody was just so captivating, yet there was always this feeling of excitement when you'd hear him play. And really, he's the person where the group interaction of jazz playing from the New Orleans, Dixieland traditional style, it's where it changed and turned into the soloist. He really was the first great soloist.
To stand on your own two legs and suddenly bring the crowd to light with a solo was the thing that he started doing. And by 1928, he was simply wonderful at it.
Louis trod a very fine line between being a popular entertainer, somebody who had enormous appeal to the general public, both by being an avuncular personality and a great singer, a wonderful interpreter of a lyric. But at the same time, he was an artist. He was somebody whose every note on the trumpet was profound improvisation.
Louis Armstrong's performance on recordings from the late 20s became the blueprints for the future of jazz.
And he'd always save enough to play the high note at the end. So there'd be this great form that he had, natural form. He wouldn't play too many high notes before that very one at the end, so it'd have maximum impact at the end. Of course, you've got the great West End blues cadenza, which is at the beginning. For once, he turns it upside down. So the beginning of West End blues goes something like this. It's just fantastic stuff that no one had done before. So the combination of this melodic, harmonic invention plus the sound.
Louis's first movie appearance was astonishing too, in a bizarre short in which he performed a song called Shine.
Louis is seen as a character in a dream of somebody who's hit on the head. And we go to a mythical heaven in which this group of African-American musicians is playing, and we see Louis himself, a very fit man wearing a leopard skin.
My hair is burning just because my teeth are burning.
Shine might be a racist lyric, just because my hair is curly, just because my teeth are pearly. But on the other hand, Louis dignifies it.
Just because my color shade makes different men. That's why they call me Shine.
I don't think he's miming in that clip. We are actually hearing what he's playing, and what he's playing is instant creation. Very few characters combine a sense that you're in the presence of art being created with every note, but at the same time accessible and somebody who reaches out and connects with the person in the street. And I think Louis does that better than anybody in the entire history of jazz.
By the early 30s, although Louis was at the top of his game musically, he had other worries. He'd been arrested for possession of marijuana in California, and gangsters from Chicago and New York were wrangling over his contract. To escape, his manager booked a tour to Europe. He arrived in style and gained a nickname, Satchmo. Louis's concerts at the London Palladium provoked mixed reactions. Some walked out. This film from that period shows a style wilder than many record fans were expecting. One newspaper compared him to James Joyce, another to an untrained gorilla.
Dinah, is anyone finer in the state of Carolina? If there is, then you know, show to me.
But the important thing was, the young man from New Orleans was on the way to becoming an international star. He would revisit Europe many times over the next 4 decades, where enthusiastic journalists waited to greet him.
And we are very, very glad, Mr. Armstrong, to welcome you into Panorama this evening. I hope you enjoyed listening to that just now.
It's kicks being here, Daddy.
Thank you.
Always kicks to come to England.
Now, with you is Kenneth Alsop of the Daily Mail. Kenneth Alsop knows a lot more about jazz than I do, and you are now his victim for the next 7 minutes.
Well, let's sit down and make ourselves comfortable.
Okay, Daddy.
It's good to see you back in London again.
Oh, yeah. I always say bless the British.
I see Mrs. Armstrong's with you.
Okay.
Hello. Mrs. Armstrong, do you always go with Louis wherever he goes?
Yes, I do, Kenneth.
It's your job to look after him.
It's, well, that's part of my marital vows, to take care of the husband.
Through the 50s and 60s, Louis became a proud ambassador for America, even traveling to Africa to spread the word of jazz.
I mean, do you feel that jazz is a universal language? Do you think it overcomes politics and nationalities?
It's stronger than the Masons, jazz.
But you, everywhere you've been, have you found people like jazz?
That's right. I mean, we couldn't say nothing in their language, but every time we start wailing, that was it. You know, we didn't have to worry about nothing then.
Louis Armstrong was a buoyant character, and he very much saw himself as an entertainer, so entertaining was what he was about. But I think with any entertainer who becomes extremely popular, and he became extremely popular, there's always a backlash. And he suffered from that backlash.
Are you still playing the same kind of music now as you played?
Why should I change? I originated all it, whatever it derived from. Why should I play anything different?
Do you think your warm, emotional kind of entertaining can make better friends between black and white people?
I think so. I mean, I'm black and I have a lot of white fans. So you got it technical there.
By the 1960s, a new kind of political confrontation over civil rights and a new generation of jazz musicians were making Satchmo's style seem more outdated than ever.
White people are responsible for all my success. And I don't care how much they march. I mean, after all, white people that stood behind Satch to put him right where he is. So, you know, I got to love him. Ain't nobody gonna tell me nothing. I send in my donation for the cause, whatever they're doing, you know, for the Negro to the extent. But the Negro didn't put me where I am today. The white people did. Watch that. So now on the rebound, the credit goes to the white people. Period.
Louis said at a fairly early stage in his life that what a black entertainer should do for his own security was to have a well-connected white man standing by him who would put his hand, this is how he put it, he'd put his hand on his shoulder and say, "This is my N-word," which I'm not going to say. And, of course, that was right at the time if you wanted to look after yourself and get on. And he'd been treated in that way in New Orleans well, so it was experience that told him that. Succeeding generations did not want to hear that, and so he would get into trouble, PC-type trouble, later in life. And it became attached to his performing style as well, because there was the grinning and the mugging and the handkerchief waving and so on. All that seemed to attach to a very old, almost minstrel era view of what a performer should be.
Louis Armstrong left his mark on the world of music and on everyone who ever met him.
In 1968, Louis comes to England, and my father takes me to the airport to meet him. As he walks over, I start playing Basin Street Blues for him. And you can see here the pictures. He's got his tongue out there, he's going, "Look at this little kid here." So, stands and listens, and actually bends down, puts his hand to his ear. I mean, great encouragement there. And afterwards, he takes my hand. I'm thinking he's going to shake my hand. But no, what did he do? There. He picks it up and kisses my hand. That's a fantastic sort of gesture, again, of a genuine man. That was it. You couldn't want a better start in life. If you wanted to play the trumpet, meet Louis Armstrong, your hero, at the age of 7. Well, it was a great start.
If if Satchmo was the great entertainer, another man would take the music to even higher levels of sophistication and artistry. A jazz legend that had the interviewers reaching for their superlatives.
It seems indisputable that Duke Ellington occupies the same sort of position in the world of jazz as Bradman used to in the world of cricket or Picasso does in the world of painting. He's the unchallengeable master. His name wouldn't be Duke Ellington, but King Ellington.
Along with Cocteau, Chaplin, Picasso, Hemingway and Orson Welles, he shared an international reputation that can never be tarnished. He's also been described as one of the greatest living composers, or the only great living American composer.
If anyone could handle that kind of introduction, it was Edward Kennedy Ellington, the Duke.
Thanks so very much, ladies and gentlemen. All the kids in the band want you to know that we do love you madly.
Worldly, elegant, almost mockingly creative, the Duke was charm personified. He was an indulged child of middle-class parents in Washington, D.C. His father worked occasionally as a butler in the White House, so it was with some satisfaction that he was honored there on his 70th birthday.
In the royalty of American music, no man swings more or stands higher than the Duke.
His achievement comes not from his virtuosity at the piano, but the musical legacy of his famous orchestra, which he kept on the road for over half a century. He left behind over 5,000 pieces of music on his death in 1974. He graduated as a commercial artist, even had a business as a sign painter, but his part-time activities as a pianist and band leader were so successful, he set off for New York to make his fortune in the music business. By 1927, he had the hottest band in Harlem, broadcasting nightly coast to coast from the notorious Cotton Club.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our famous Cotton Club. Great to see so many friends here tonight enjoying themselves in spite of the cover charge. And if you can spare a minute from your merrymaking, I'd like to have the pleasure of introducing the greatest living master of jungle music, the rip-roaring harmony hound, Duke Ellington. Take your bow, Dukey.
The jungle is a place I've always had an inclination toward, because nobody's ever been to the jungle.
The Cotton Club was for whites only. The audience came uptown for a night of walking on the wild side.
He treated his band as a theatrical troupe. I mean, he didn't so much appoint musicians as cast them as characters. And they all had to have a strong instrumental character themselves.
Ellington evoked the sounds of this fantasy jungle by employing the talents of a trumpeter called Bubba Miley.
Bubba Miley, he was the first one to do a jungle sound with a plunger. Now, if I can get a cup. So imagine that's a plunger, so he'd be able to do the. And then he'd put a growl with it. So this is how they found out. They just tried things over the bell, you know.
The Duke's appeal to white audiences made him a natural for the movies. But Hollywood didn't dare to feature an integrated band, so the lighter-skinned trombonist on the right had to be blacked up.
Hey, man, I like that piano player. Yeah, the hot kid.
Duke Ellington was two things. He was a very creative composer, and he was one of the most astonishingly astute magpies in jazz history. He could spot 16 bars of melody that would work very well with another 16 bars that he'd just written. And there's a degree of controversy about the degree to which he stole from his sidemen, but there's certainly no doubt that tunes that they'd done nothing with, he worked out how to package and present in an extremely successful way.
Mr. Dankworth, Mr. Littleton, the floor is yours.
Duke, we... Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning. We live on legends over here. There are a great many legends about as to how you have composed your tunes in the past. If it's not asking a trade secret, how do you like to compose?
How do I like to? Oh, anyway at all, just so it comes out sounding interesting.
I mean, do you compose at the piano, for instance?
Sometimes, and then again, I do a lot of writing on, I think on trains is one of the best places, and so many times in bed. So you get an idea, and no matter how tired you are, you have to put the light on and reach over and maybe, or sometimes a tune just comes into you, knocks you down.
Yeah.
You can't resist it, and you just have to put it down. And usually it associates itself with some specific performer in the band.
Ellington evolved a sound using muted brass and the clarinet, in fact, to make a kind of music he kept through his whole career called mood music, which is very harmonically sophisticated, yet simple sounding melodically. Melodies such as Mood Indigo. Mood Indigo is like a swan on the pond because it just moves along and all you see is this beautiful tune going slowly past, but of course the harmonic flippers underneath are kicking like crazy to keep it all moving.
In the winter of 1965, the Duke Ellington Orchestra was filmed by the BBC on an extensive European tour. Their non-stop travelling had been a feature of the band's existence since the 30s.
Night after night after night, different town, tough economy seats, rattly old buses, cold. What were they eating? Were they allowed through the front door? They have to come around the back? What was the race situation? I mean, it's just like, yeah, travelling, tough. It's not for sissies.
I mean, let me tell you this, folks, if you decide to run a band, you're going to upset some of your musicians. Even if it's over something silly, like what time are we all going to have our meal? Somebody's not going to like it. So, at any stage during running a band, you'll get called what will come out in predictive text as the word "aunt" by your musicians.
Johnny and I are both band leaders. What is the secret of keeping a band together for as long as you do? Because
Well, you've got to have a gimmick, Humphrey. It's the one I use. I mean, I use a gimmick.
Yeah.
Just give them money.
Yes, I can see that's very popular.
Big band becomes an animal in itself, and it's one that has to be fed with new music. What keeps it alive is having new music and having to do shows and recording in between that. So it becomes a living entity, but it can only live by doing lots of shows. If you couldn't tour, there's nothing else. That's what the life of a big band is touring.
Sometimes you say, well, I know these guys are going to be dead after making this 500-mile ride tonight when they get in here, and they get in there, and they come up and they get a dark look on their face, and they growl maybe, and they go out and then they blow right up through the ceiling, better than ever,
Ellington's life is a series of paradoxes. He's somebody who's a composer and a band leader, a pianist and a private man, a serial philanderer and a married man. All these things add up together to make a complex personality, which he very successfully concealed for a lot of his life. One of the most successful ways of concealing a double, duple, triple, quintuple set of layers is to go on the road, because everywhere you turn up, you're presenting that persona that you've carefully built up for yourself to your audience, and the private man stays private.
Have you ever felt the need, or indeed done it, what a lot of jazz musicians do when they get into a sort of a tiring routine of taking dope or anything like that? Have you ever done that?
No. I'm too primitive, you see. I'm very primitive. I am the primitive illiterate. Because, I mean, so much so that I don't even know what I'm going to have for breakfast until in the morning or whenever I wake up, I walk into the jungle. And if I see a twig on this side of the tree and a bear on that side, I have to decide whether I want a big meal or a little meal, you know. And of course, if you have the bear, of course, you have the advantage of having a coat to wear for the cold season, too.
I'm not sure I quite understand that, but...
Yeah, well, you're civilized.
And now, one of the segments of our new Impressions of the Far East suite. The scene is Isfahan, the solo by Johnny Hodges.
Over the years, the Duke's writing became more artful, more about getting people to listen than to dance. Each extensive foreign tour gave the Magpie Duke new sights, sounds, and impressionist fragments to play with. They were constructed into long-form, loosely structured suites.
What Duke Ellington was doing was creating a music that was really born out of the 20th century, the sound of the 20th century, the atmosphere of the 20th century. And so Duke Ellington is really one of the great originators musically beyond category.
A 1, 2.
Well, this is Jones, taken from our latest single record. And it's a little melody written for the purpose of giving background to gentle and cool finger snapping. Of course, one never snaps one's fingers on the beat. It's considered aggressive. You don't push it, you just let it fall, like this. And of course, if you're real cool, then you can manage to affect a tilt of the left earlobe at the same time, like this, you know. And if you're cooler than that, then of course, you tilt the left earlobe on the beat and snap the finger on the afterbeat like this, you know. As a matter of fact, by routining the tilting of the earlobe and snapping the finger, one can become as cool as one wishes to be.
In 1930s America, jazz became a national obsession thanks to something called swing. It was a dance craze, a teen phenomenon, and a commercial sensation, examined by the newsreel The March of Time in its inimitable style.
Every day into music shops from coast to coast go more and more customers, all for the same thing, the latest in swing music.
The joint was jumping for black and white audiences alike. One of the most celebrated bands had come up the hard way from jazz's Wild West, Kansas City. The film Reveille with Beverly showed them in a sophisticated setting with an easy swing and a frontman of unusual charisma. Of all the jazz musicians who preferred to let their music do the talking, this man said the most with the least. He started out in the bars of Harlem, where he was an avid student of Fats Waller, and ended up as jazz aristocracy. William Basie was born in New Jersey, toured the vaudeville circuit, and ended up in Kansas City, where he honed his blues-infused style.
The big difference between him and the Eastern big bands is that whereas Duke Ellington was playing for floor shows at the Cotton Club, and there was a very quick turnaround, you played 6 or 7 numbers in a half-hour set, then you were off and another band came on. Basie was used to playing for hours and hours and hours. His band would be the only one, and it would go on all night. Basie always looked cool. And I think the reason for that is that if he played frenetically for these hours of late-night jam session in Kansas City, he'd be dead. As it was, the band developed a very relaxed four-to-the-bar swing in which the propulsion is shared equally between bass, drums, guitar and piano. And Basie had that down to a fine art.
I think one of the great attributes of Count Basie's band is just the unadulterated, soulful swinginess of the band, the rhythm that they conjure, the sense of blues feeling, and just the hipness. I mean, it's staggering. It's absolutely staggering. And all from this man who's genteel and polite and you know, says many things with very few notes. It's just awesome.
I love Count Basie. The great thing about him is just whenever he plays, you can spot it's him. I know it's him a mile off. That's what I love it, you know, and it's suddenly that whole thing sort of, you don't know why, but as soon as he's doing it, you're just going like this. And you can't figure out, a lot of the time he's not even playing. But because he's there, it's going like that. And he does one thing and then keeps it going like that, you know, that's the great thing. And him leaving these great gaps, marvellous. And everything's just so kind of lazy and perfect. It just kind of makes you get giddy with wanting to swing, you know. It's a master of swing, that's what Count Basie is.
When you're listening to other people playing jazz, have you got any particular preference?
Well, I like any type of music that, to me, is sort of have a little beat with it, you know, whether it's jazz, swing, modern, rock and roll, anything like that.
You like rock and roll?
Well, there's anything wrong with it because I've been hearing that this rock and roll, I mean, ever since I've been knowing what music is, that is music with a beat, but I guess it's, they've added a little roll to it, or rock with it by the different little vocals and things that have been happening. See, but as far as the beat is concerned, that's been happening for many, many years.
It's just not new.
I don't think the beat's being new, really.
Got it.
Yes?
Fine.
Basie was a gentler, more self-effacing man than Ellington. While there are books and books and books of Ellington quotes, I don't think I know a single Count Basie bon mot.
Probably the two most famous orchestras of all time would be your orchestra and Duke's orchestra. All right. What would you say was the difference? What would your impressions of the difference between the two bands be?
Class.
The master, he had it. That was the man. That was the man. The bands, he was the boss. You did play together at one point. Yes, we did. Really? I was in the hall. You. That's right. It's beautiful. The greatest. Well, I know how he loved
It was
your...
a pleasure and honor to be in the same hall with the Duke.
What more can I say? Don't ask me anymore about it.
In the 1940s came the revolution. Bebop broke all the rules of conventional melody and rhythm. One of its pioneers was a virtuoso trumpeter called Dizzy Gillespie. His unique, frenetic style horrified some and enthralled others.
Any record with Dizzy Gillespie, for me, still often sounds the most exciting trumpet playing ever. I think Dizzy's ability to play thousands of notes in a minute and know what each one was second to none.
I can remember the first time I heard Dizzy Gillespie playing. That was like being punched in the face with music. It was incredible. And that's done me ever since, really. I still haven't finished eating that big pie.
It's funny that although bebop really happened in the early 1940s, something that was born 70 years ago still causes controversy and is still thought of by some listeners as modern. In my view, bebop is a very natural evolution. It's a word that Dizzy Gillespie applied to it a lot. And it's an evolution of music from people who had simply played so much of it they wanted somewhere else to go. So now's the moment. You change the chords, you change the rhythm, and you play differently.
The bebop experiment began in Manhattan, with musicians from the big bands coming together in after-hours jam sessions. It reached its critical mass when Gillespie began playing with the legendary sax player Charlie Parker.
My style developed rapidly after meeting Charlie Parker, after being inspired by him, and the same thing held true for Charlie Parker and me. My main contribution is rhythm, for one thing. I created a lot of different rhythms from South America and put it into the music, and also chord progressions. I showed all the piano players how to play for us, not for the older guys. You know, um-cha, um-cha, um-cha. Charlie Parker developed mostly selection of notes, and the way that he played the notes with the accent, it sounded like a rivet. You know, the way that he, some slurred and some attacked and some, and that's the basis of our music. We were very close. We felt one another. Like one time I said that when his heart beat the first beat, mine beat the second beat, and his beat the third, mine beat the fourth. You know, the heart beats, and it was just a very close relationship. And not long. You see, it wasn't a long, drawn-out thing. It was very intense and short, which is like the, it's not the length of and it ain't what you do, it's how you do it.
Bebop even had its own uniform, an arty nod to Parisian style devised by Gillespie himself.
We did this concert, and if anybody came to the concert with a beret and a goatee and horn-rimmed glasses, they got in free. You should have seen the people there with horn-rimmed glasses, and some of the women painted goatee here.
jazz had changed fundamentally. It would now always be before and after bebop.
The impact of bebop was that the virtuosity and the soulfulness of the music was able to be fused into yet another dimension. It was also about small band interaction, which then would allow the music that we know as the more modern forms of jazz to be built.
Experimental modern jazz went on to flourish in small clubs. Mainstream jazz found a home on Jazz 625 on the BBC's new highbrow channel, BBC Two, launched in 1964. Leading the way was a talented young pianist called Oscar Peterson. Oscar was at home in the TV age and a regular guest on Parkinson.
You make it look so easy, actually. I mean, do you ever play a bum note?
Oh, every time.
No way.
Every tune.
Really? Mm-hmm. You never play anything perfectly at all?
I don't think there is a pianist that plays anything perfectly.
No.
But we fooled a lot of you, didn't we?
But the relaxed manner hid a furiously competitive streak.
Oscar was one of the most competitive men I've ever met. His father, who was a Pullman porter, used to make him learn piano exercises, and while his dad went off to the other side of Canada on a train, Oscar would have to have got them right by the time the old man came home a few days later. And his old man set him the task of becoming the most competitive, the best pianist in jazz. There wasn't any second place for Oscar. He wanted to be the best, and whenever I heard him on stage, whenever I met him and interviewed him for the BBC, it was undeniable that he felt that that's what he was.
Peterson's musical hero was Art Tatum, who had a fearsome reputation in after-hours piano contests.
He spent 12 to 18 hours a day practicing to try and become or to have the fluidity of technique that he heard in Art Tatum. So I'm sure that anybody who was even near to the kind of technique that he achieved, he would be like, well, I better just practice a bit more. Or, what have you got for me? Let me see what you got. Oh, I can take you out easily, you know. And, you know, it's all a bit tongue-in-cheek. Sometimes it can get a bit serious, but, I mean, ultimately it's the poetry of the music that matters. But obviously, if you've got an edge, and it's because you're stronger, faster, tougher, or even more delicate, prettier, you know, those attributes, then you're going to shove it in people's faces.
Peterson was given his own show on BBC Two, and even got to compare notes with Count Basie on the competitiveness of Art Tatum.
When Art Tatum used to play, he had a trick he used to do. If a soloist was playing, they're playing something above this tempo, he would lay one of these on him, like... And of course, right?
That's just what you've been doing to me all the time.
And usually in the after-hour places, you know, the great instigations that used to go on, they'd see two piano players together, and say Art, they'd say, well, why don't you play something? And Art, you play something. You know, he went straight to the piano, and he, like, just took it apart, literally. You know, just wasted everything on the piano.
You'd play something like what?
Pardon?
What will you play something like about 8 bars of what? Something like what?
Oh, I know. I can't really do it because I'm
just a little bit, about 8 bars.
I can't do it, really.
You do it.
I have never imitated
Yeah,
it.
just, no, I know, but you just play 8 bars. Just play 8 bars. Just 8 bars? Just play some 8 bars.
When he was playing duets with people, he never openly saw it as what they used to call a cutting competition, what the pianists used to do in the 30s and 40s and that. But I think he saw it that he had to sort of be the best, you know. And why not? Because he kind of was.
One of the highlights of Oscar's career was his partnership with one of the greatest jazz singers of all time, Ella Fitzgerald.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Oscar. That was superb, as usual. And right now, we'd like to do one of our Irving Berlin songs from our songbook, which is still available. And we hope you like it. It's called Cheek to Cheek. Heaven, I'm in heaven, and my heart beats so that I can hardly speak, and I seem to...
Ella Fitzgerald shone as an artist. She shone as a singer, as an improviser. Everything worked in Ella.
When we're out together, dancing cheek to cheek, heaven, I'm in heaven, and the cares that hung around me through the week seem to vanish like a gambler's lucky streak. When we're out together, dancing cheek to cheek.
Ella's long career included swing, bebop, blues, and popular songs. In 1980, at the age of 62, she told her friend Oscar Peterson about how she got started.
I really didn't think I was going to be a singer. I was going to be a dancer.
Let's do the next tune.
That's a fact.
You were really serious about being a dancer?
I really wanted to be a dancer. I made a bet with some girlfriends of mine, and we wanted to go in an amateur contest, and we just signed our names, and mine was called, so I had to go. And when I saw all those lights out there, and there's no way in the world I was going to dance, and the man said, well, do something. You're out here. So I tried to sing like Miss Connie Boswell, and we had a record at home of her singing The Object of My Affection, and I tried to sing like her, and I won first prize. The object of my affection that changed my complexion, brown to rosy red. Rosy red, rosy red. They said, that girl can sing. Got first prize, $12.50.
It was one of the best rags to riches stories in jazz. The shy 16-year-old was spotted by band leader Chick Webb, became his star vocalist, and even took over his band when he died. In 1974, the BBC filmed Ella in performance at Ronnie Scott's Club in London. By this stage of her career, she was more usually seen in concert halls and festivals, but the intimacy suited her. She certainly made a night of it.
Want to leave you happy, don't want to leave you sad. We want to leave you happy, don't want to leave you sad. Want to sing some blues, but don't want to sing them bad. Roy wail for you, he wailed the blues tonight.
I love that performance because the thing about Ella Fitzgerald, she walks on stage, she's so unpretentious. She walks on stage, she's got this childlike quality of joy to be there, like she can't quite believe it's happening still. And there they are, the guys, they obviously love her. Complete respect, warmth coming from all of them. I mean, before she sings a note, it's a lovable scenario. And then off she goes, and she's a natural.
But
She sings with such intelligence. Her phrasing is never too much. It's sophisticated, it's classy, it swings, it's got sass, she's tender, she's foxy, and she's innocent all at the same time as well.
Thank you so very, very much. You know, this is my first time, and many, many, many years playing a nightclub in London. I think it's my first time in London. I was in a little club in Manchester, they tell me. But anyway, but you are so beautiful. And, oh, thank you, my love. I love you too.
How do you feel about being described as sexy but motherly, as having the same kind of appeal in Britain as the Queen Mother? How do you
Queen
feel?
Mother? Well, I'd like the sexy part. And I'm not quite ready to settle down too low, too much now. I still believe.
Someday you come along, and that I love, and he'll be big and strong, the man I love. And when he comes my way, I'll do my best to make him stay.
The song is by George and Ira Gershwin. It had been part of her repertoire since the 50s, when she recorded a series of albums known as the Songbooks. They give a jazz treatment to classics from Broadway musicals and Hollywood movies.
My favourite Ella period is the songbook era, you know, really through the 50s. I think that's when she really was in the best voice. And she says that she used to be able to do these songbooks in 3 weeks, which is brilliant, you know, learning all the lyrics, getting inside the song, interpreting the song, delivering it with such panache, such class. That's amazing. It can take 3 years to really learn a song. It could take 30 years to learn a song to really get it, but she was in such great form.
He'll build a little wall, just meant for two.
Ira Gershwin said, "I never knew how good our songs were until I heard Ella Fitzgerald sing them."
Would you?
When Ella died, one writer summed up the achievement of the songbooks. Here was a black woman popularizing urban songs, often written by immigrant Jews, to a national audience of predominantly white Christians. They've become a cultural landmark.
Truly great music is timeless, and when you listen to a great recording by Ella Fitzgerald, you don't think, oh, that's a wonderful piece of nostalgia that I can just dip into. I think to myself, I can't imagine anybody singing like that today.
And so all else above, I'm waiting for the man I love. Hey, come on, man. Come on, man.